Next up in the shop renovation was getting the plywood walls installed throughout the shop. Unfortunately, the shop is bursting at the seams with my stuff right now, so I had to start by cleaning up my work area a bit, and then I could start sorting through the plywood I had brought with me from the old shop. So as you might remember from the last video, I had seen some mold growth on the unfinished wood in the shop, but thankfully this pile of plywood hadn't seen much mold growth. As I sorted through the panels, I sprayed down any visible mold with this mold spray, and I will be having the mold remediation crew out as soon as they can fit me into their schedule. Anyway, I started hanging the plywood by setting a full panel up on a scrap piece of 3/4 inch Advantech to space the plywood off of the floor. I double checked the panel was level, and this first panel would dictate the rest of the panels in this row, so I made sure to get it nice and level before screwing the plywood to the wall. I used these awesome GRK screws to fasten the plywood to the walls, and while the 3-inch long screws were probably overkill, this plywood had warped a good bit from the humidity in the shop, plus I didn't have to worry about hitting any electrical wiring in the studs since I'm doing all surface mounted wiring. One pro tip when adding the rest of the screws to the center of the panel is to set up a line laser, and this will just ensure you don't miss your studs and takes all the guesswork out of the process. I also tried out some of these smaller trim head screws around the edges of the panels, and while they worked, they had the tendency to kind of pull through this plywood. With the first panel in place, I could continue on down the line, moving the spacer, setting the next panel in place, and screwing it to the wall. Also, I realized this thick of a spacer probably wasn't as necessary here on the platform we had built. That said, I definitely don't want any of the moisture from the slab coming into contact with the plywood, and I figured it didn't hurt to have the same gap here on the platform. My RoboVac also decided to come say hello, and I swear that this thing finds me wherever I am in this giant shop. Anyway, from there I just continued on down the wall, and this process went pretty quickly, especially since I already had holes in the plywood to tell me roughly where to put my screws. I jumped around a bit here as I only wanted to install the plywood I needed to mount the mini split units, which I covered in the last video. On the second wall section, I needed to rip the first panel to width, and I used my track saw for this. And I absolutely love my track saw for this kind of work, and I cannot recommend getting one enough if you work with a lot of sheet goods. I continued on down the wall and eventually moved to the second row, and thankfully these panels were all right around 2 feet long, so I didn't end up with any crappy offcuts. Also, since I'll be installing a drop ceiling in the shop, the top 8 inches of the wall will be covered, so the top row definitely didn't need to be perfect. I once again jumped around to get the last mini split unit up, and that's where I called it for the initial plywood installation. Thankfully, the Perkins crew had just wrapped up their last house project, so they were able to help me out with finishing the rest of the plywood install. And as soon as the guys started working, I quickly realized I was going to run out of plywood, so Eric and I ran out to grab more materials while Ray, Jason, and Jono kept hanging sheets.
I'm here with Johnny, and last time we loaded his Silverado at a box store, it broke the tailgate. Johnny's got a little footage of that. He's going to roll for a second. Wow!
I mean, what? This truck is freaking flat. That's impressive.
Let's check out Johnny's tailgate, because that was more of a load than I've ever seen on any regular truck. It did do a little damage here, kind of squished it there, and otherwise though it's shuts, so that's good. We're gonna see if this thing will hold 16 sheets of drywall and then 10 more sheets of OSB. I'm interested to see.
It's nice and spread out, you know?
I want to point out I love the fix that you did with the tailgate by getting a mountain bike cover thing for it.
Yeah,
And yeah, you can't tell it's broken, and you look way cooler riding around.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell my truck with that installed.
Yeah.
Thanks for all the help.
That's not terrible.
We got
You got some suspension left. Yeah, you're good. Slow down, buddy.
They got
We got a lot of weight. We made it. So if you didn't know, Johnny is kind enough to actually hire our crew to come here when we have like one day where we have nothing to do, which is really nice, because it's hard to get a job in construction that only lasts one day and then you're free and clear and you can just walk from it. So thank you very much, bud.
Thank y'all. It's very disappointing when I don't have the Perkins crew.
I know that
Because I'm like,
feeling.
man,
Yeah.
work is getting done so slowly.
Yeah.
It's amazing what we can get done when y'all are here.
Whoa. How's it going in here?
It's going great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Getting a lot done?
Where have you guys been?
at Lowe's or Home Depot actually.
For what?
Buying stuff.
I love how like we all show up for work and you've been here for a minute and a half, and then you go shopping. What is up with that? Is that like seniority or something?
I don't know.
I think we should go by age. I think age should shop.
Wait.
And you young
We
guys-
lifted like 700
young guys
pounds.
should-
While the guys kept chugging along hanging plywood, Eric and I got to work hanging drywall on the outside of the CNC room. Why drywall, you might ask? Well, after doing some research, I decided to add a layer of drywall to both the inside and outside face of the walls of the CNC room and the dust collection closet to hopefully help with the soundproofing. And I considered using green glue as well, which is a special noise-proofing adhesive that creates an air gap between your two layers of sheeting, but I couldn't get it shipped to me in time, and I figured this extra drywall will hopefully still help with sound transmission. Thankfully, the drywall installation went super quick, largely due to the fact that I have a collated screw gun. And these things make hanging drywall a breeze, and I'd highly recommend picking one up if you have a big drywall project coming up. The rest of the Perkins crew caught up to us just as we finished adding drywall to this first wall, and they also had to notch around these steel I-beams on this top row. And we'll be adding some kind of trim to clean this up later on. So as you can see, the guys just hung the plywood right on top of the drywall once they got to that section, and I guess we'll see how well soundproof that room ends up being.
So we're ripping down some drywall to 23 3/4, and we're trying a couple different methods to see what's fastest. Johnny showed me the little pro tip of how the real drywallers do it, using a tape measure as a gauge, your finger as a guide, and your blade on the end, on the inside, like that. My fingers,
Super easy.
dude, it was burning my finger off on that top edge.
Dude, you look so natural doing that.
Yeah, man, smooth as silk.
It's
Just,
not real straight.
you
But
know,
it'll still fit.
good enough.
You gotta practice to get good, is what
Yeah.
I'd say.
This is a good place to practice.
Sight down that bad boy.
Oh yeah,
You see it?
straight.
Let's see if it fits.
Like a glove.
You know, I think I'm gonna stick with the old T-square.
And it
Tried
worked.
and true. My other technique didn't turn out too accurate, but it's hard to mess this one up.
It is.
Well, it's not hard actually. With
No.
the two-sided blade, it's not a single side on that. I can very easily like.
What always happens to me is that goes
it does
in.
like that,
You
yeah,
know, you're
so-
pushing too
What
hard.
you gotta do? You gotta get your leg up on it like that. See that?
Yeah,
They'll teach you that in carpenter school.
the old carpenter straddle. That one's for the ladies.
From there, the guys kept hanging plywood while Eric and I turned our attention to mounting some flat 2x4s to the block wall on the left side of the platform so that we could hang more plywood on this wall. Unfortunately though, I was running into a little trouble with my screws grabbing.
We're moving on to this wall and tack conning these furring strips on. We're having some trouble. We don't know what the issue is, but
I had the same issue when I was doing the mini splits out back. It seems like this block is just, I don't know if it's just so old or if back in the day it was made like kind of more porous, but these Tapcons just do not want to grab. They're just spin out.
they're spinning out.
One trick we used at the old shop, because we kind of ran into a similar thing, was to use a little length of string trimmer line, and you stick that in the hole after you drill your hole, and just adding that little bit of plastic helps the threads grab a little bit tighter and keeps it from spinning. So I think we might go out and buy some string trimmer.
We got the cheapest string trimmer line you can buy, 0.105 diameter, and we're gonna try some of these cut nails.
I've never seen these
Johnny.
for masonry. I've seen cut nails for
Yeah.
like old school woodworking, but not
Yes. So they work. Like I've nailed a lot of stuff to concrete with those things.
this. We'll see.
Gotta have a steel face hammer though.
All right, Grandpa.
Yeah, back in my day, we didn't have these fancy screws.
Better.
Yeah, that's a lot better. Pro tip.
Pro tip.
Get your string line. Yeah, that's hitting hard.
Much better.
Wanna try a cut nail?
Yeah, let's try a cut nail. All right, now we can try the cut nail.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. Dang, yeah, that definitely holds.
I might want to.
What was that?
Out of breath for a second. It would be good to use a 2-pound sledge or something. With
Yeah,
those. That was a lot of work.
I got a 10-pound
That's
sledge.
too much sledge for me.
You think?
It actually is pretty important to orient the wide side of the nail like this way, up and down with the grain, as opposed to that way, where it would split the grain really badly. But let's try the 10 pounder. I'm not so sure I can even do it, but we'll get it started. And then take the squarer side.
Yeah, you can do that, and I'll do my string trimmer line.
Okay, yeah. So Tapcons, definitely the way of the future. See, I remember doing that when I was younger, and it wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
Maybe I was in better shape.
It looks physically demanding.
My dad just made us do stuff the hard way, I guess.
Man.
But that holds.
Yeah, it holds.
But that sucks. I made you buy them.
Yeah,
so
I'm glad
it was $10.
Box of 50 of them.
Yeah, I'll burn them up for you. Cheers. Jason, I got a job for you.
Masonry nails.
I'm good, thanks.
He usually loves sledgehammers.
Why don't you just use tap counts?
While Eric burned through those masonry nails, I kept going with the Tapcons and string trimmer line, and we got most of these 2x4s mounted before calling it a day on day one with the Perkins crew. The following day, Ray and Jono came back to help wrap up the plywood installation. I finished adding more 2x4s to the concrete wall, adding some horizontally to span across the crappy door to the spray room, which I definitely wanted to cover up. And we were running out of plywood, but managed to salvage the last few pieces we needed from the plywood we had demoed when we dropped the floor joists earlier in the series, hence the few kind of oddly colored pieces. I got the last piece installed on this wall, and then we moved to the dust collector closet where the last few pieces needed to be installed. We wrapped up the inside of the closet with more drywall and plywood, and then turned our attention to filling in those cutouts from the outlet boxes at the old shop. I had initially considered just adding a strip of trim over the center of the walls, but decided to just go ahead and fill them in since the trim would have interfered with the surface-mounted conduit. To fill the holes, I first cut some small patches from some scrap pieces of plywood at the table saw. To attach the patches inside the hole, I first screwed on a few strips of plywood to the inside of the wall, and then I could just screw the patch to the strips. And I also tried to keep a small gap around the edges of the patch so I could fill them in with spackling later on. And I had painted a section of the wall with one of these patches for an Instagram post, and as you can see, after adding the spackling and paint, the holes pretty much disappeared. We continued on with the patch installation on the rest of the outlet holes, and once that was done, we could call the plywood wall installation complete.
All right, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I am really excited with how the shop is coming together. It looks so much better with all these plywood walls up. Also, as you might be able to see in the background, we got a lot of the trim installed and the screw holes and the seams between the panels patched. So things are starting to look really good. I'll be covering all of that work in next week's video. So if you don't want to miss that video and all the future videos in the series, go ahead and get subscribed and ring the notification bell. Also, as always, I'll have links to all the tools and materials I use down in the video description below. And last, if you want to support me, I sell merch. I have plans available for a lot of my woodworking projects, and I also have Patreon and YouTube members set up, so go check out one of those. All right, thanks for watching, y'all, and until next week, happy building.